Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you've decided to spend a little bit of time with us this morning for the Essay Clinic. My name is Mike Davila. If we have not had a chance to meet, I am really happy to have a chance to be with you today as we talk about something that I think is probably one of the most important writing things that you will ever do in your high school years and not get a grade on, so it's kind of crazy. I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Peter Guzman, and I'm going to have Peter just talk a little bit about his background here in a minute before we get rolling. So a little bit of housekeeping before we kick off. This session is being recorded, so relax, just absorb the information. If you want to take notes, that's fantastic. If you want to ask questions, that's great. I'll tell you how to do that here in a sec. But the main thing is I really want you to be able to be comfortable, to absorb the information and not worry. If you need the information replayed, it's going to end up in a folder, in your portal. So do not worry. You're always going to have a chance to review the information. One of the things that I would say, if in essay brainstorming, when we get to this section every year, I kind of think, oh man, how can we do this a little bit better? And to me, the thing that crossed my mind is that your resume that you guys have been working on is really important to your educational consultant as they start to help you brainstorm topics to write on for Coalition, Common App, Texas, Apply Texas, all the separate apps, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have a resume that's kind of in beta stage, you started it 7 months ago, it's still kind of kicking around, it's got some cobwebs on it or whatever, definitely now is the time to knock those cobwebs off, to clean it up and get it into kind of final-ish format. And the second page of that resume, gang, is really important to your educational consultants. So they've gotten to know you, but this helps them understand even more about you. And they're going to be using that in their preparation for your particular essay brainstorming meetings. So thanks in advance for taking that on as a little bit of homework. Okay, so one of the other things is, we are going to blink an eye and it'll be summer. You guys have crossed the threshold of spring break. You guys are in the home stretch. And so bottom line is, now is the time to start actually working on essays. And I'm laughing because every year at this point, I start asking students, hey, are any of your buddies working on essays? And they're like, hell no, no one's working on essays. People are working on, other things and not even thinking about college applications, basically, other than just to stress out about them. So I just want to let you know, time is going to start to accelerate. Okay, it's not linear. I can't explain it, but that's the way it works. Okay, so during the presentation, we have a lot of folks on today's call. And so two things. One, we're going to do two of these sessions, one now and probably one in June as we get closer to applications being opened. But you may have questions, and all questions are valuable. Okay, so do not hesitate to ask a question during today's session, because I guarantee you there's several other people out there who are like, yeah, man, I'm glad that question was asked because I was a little shy. Okay, so a couple ways that you can actually ask questions. The first is you can unmute yourself and just ask us, kind of in a natural pause. That's totally fine. Another way to do that is that if you look at the Zoom functions that are on your screen someplace, there is a chat feature. So go ahead and you can chat those into us, and Peter and I will be answering those questions kind of in real time as we go through. And the third way to ask a question is at the end, we're going to pause and open up for questions. Okay, so that's the laydown. Anyway, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for sharing time with me and with Peter. Peter, I'm going to turn it to you. Why don't you give us a little bit about your background?
Sure, thank you. Good morning again. My name is Peter Guzman, and I've worked with some of y'all. There's some familiar faces out there. But for those of you who don't know me, my background has pretty much been in higher education for the last 25 years. The start of my career was working in undergraduate admissions at some different schools. I worked at Grinnell College, a small liberal arts college in Iowa, for a couple of years, moved on to Washington University in St. Louis, and have also worked at Rice University At Rice, I co-coordinated the Rice Baylor Medical Scholars Program that students can do. They do 4 years at Rice, and then they have 4 years at Baylor College of Medicine. So I've been involved in the entire admissions process, out on the road recruiting, reading applications, reading lots of essays, lots of letters of recommendation, all of it. And then most recently, I was at the University of Texas here in Austin, and working with students in the College of Natural Sciences, biology majors, pre-med students, computer science majors. So I've definitely been on both sides of it, the students who are coming in to college and that whole process. And then of course, what they're doing once they get there, and things of that nature. So hopefully amidst all that experience, I'll be able to offer some thoughts and suggestions and helpful hints and that sort of thing. And as Mike said, feel free to pipe up in the chat with whatever questions you may have, and there will be an opportunity for some Q&A when we wrap up. So that's a little bit about who I am. And Mike, I'll throw it back to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Peter. How many essays do you think you've read in your lifetime? I'm just curious.
Oh gosh.
Hit you with a stumper right away.
Yeah, maybe 6,000. Maybe, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, seriously, that's a ridiculous number of essays. And to me, in my mind, when I talk with admissions reps, they're like, oh yeah, we have a sixth sense. We can tell if someone else has written the essay. We can tell if someone's completely BSing us, And I've not read that many essays, I promise. But even for myself, I think I've got to a point of going, yeah, this is not authentic, or this is really great, or I don't know. I don't even know how that is. It's like learning a foreign language or something. So yeah, all fun. So a little bit about my background. I graduated from the United States Naval Academy way back in the 90s. I was on active duty as a surface warfare officer for about 6.5 years, and I got a chance to go back and teach at the Naval Academy. That kind of got me into the wide world of higher education. I left the military, and then I went out into the private sector, worked at Merrill Lynch for several years, then became an educational consultant in 2003. I met Peter actually in a master's degree at UT program, and that's where we got to be buddies. And yeah, so started Inroads in 2009, and the rest is kind of history. So we are both really glad to be here with you guys today. So without further ado, what are we going to talk about? Okay, so first things first, hey, what are admissions people looking for in your essays? We definitely want to crack that open as a question to ask. Then we're going to talk about how to begin the essay process, how to write a great college essay. Then we're going to talk about the different types of college admissions applications and their essays. What are the big differences? We're going to talk about the prompts for each of the applications, some strange essay questions, supplemental essays, how to handle those, and the process, the timeline, how do we approach this? What should this look like for you? So a lot of stuff to cover today. So we're going to dive right in. So, housekeeping, I covered some things initially. So definitely make sure you're working your resume. You might want to think about your letters of recommendations, things like that. Who's going to write those? You don't have to gather them yet, but you really need to identify who the people are who are going to be writing them. Obviously, most of you have been working in our process for a little bit of time. For those of you who's just joined the process, don't sweat this next bullet point. You'll get there, which is researching your college list so that you can get to 8 to 10 colleges. Why is that important in the essay meeting? It's because clearly you're going to write some general essays that are going to be carte blanche across the whole universe of schools you apply to, but then you're going to actually have some very specific supplemental questions that you'll need to ask or answer for your specific schools. Demonstration of interest, we're going to get a blast out to you guys on that. I'm not going to belabor that today. Studying for SAT and ACT, if you have that on your radar, definitely you should be doing that. And then visiting campuses, and if you have to do that virtually just because of time or space or whatever, that's totally fine as well. But it is important to be visiting campuses and helping yourself in your research and narrowing down your list of schools. Okay. So big picture, let's start here. Why bother with an essay? Peter, why should anyone even write an essay for college? What's the deal here?
I mean, your essay really is kind of your kind of final pitch, if you will. So if you've ever, seen like Shark Tank or something like that, they go in, they go before a group of investors, and that's where they're making their pitch. And up to that point, you've kind of put everything together, whether, it's your product. In this case, it's your high school record. You've done your SATs and ACTs, you kind of, everything's kind of set at this point. I've taken my classes, I'm making my grades, that sort of thing. So this is really kind of your opportunity to close the deal, so to speak. And I think, what's important about the essay is that, it's really going to tell an admissions officer who you are and what sets you apart from everyone else that they're evaluating. So, if you are somebody who is a straight A student and has taken 12 APs and has a 1500 SAT, that's awesome. But you could be applying to a very competitive school where there's quite literally 1,000 other students who look just like you in that regard. And so what is it about you that's going to set you apart from the pack? And it's not solely your essay. Clearly, it's also going to include your activities, the things that you've been involved in, and therefore what you're passionate about. To some extent, your letters of recommendation or other things that people have to say about you, but they want to hear from you. They want to hear who it is that's going to be on our campus for the next 4 years. What are they going to contribute, not only in the classroom, but to the general campus environment? And so the essay really is, like I said, kind of your chance to make your final pitch and seal the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Peter. I mean, I think about this like in the bullet point number 3, what do they really want to hear about? And tell me if this is wrong from your perspective, Peter, but for me, when I start to look at that question, it could be anything. It literally can be, the hobbies that you do, the quirks that you have, your, closet passion for, Legos. The gamut of what you could talk about in a college essay is just all over the place. And that's kind of our job as a educational consultant, is to kind of lasso all those things together and help you strategically think about what to present. But I have seen essays across the board that don't just, follow some standard format, and there is no secret sauce where you're just like, oh yeah, we'll write about this topic and you'll get in, that sort of thing. How do you share that view or what?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think, I've read essays about everything. I was just thinking this morning about, what are some of the essays that I have read and that I recall. And I remember reading an essay from a student who was invited to participate in his Episcopal church's, like a bishop was visiting. And so he was talking about how excited he was, but how nervous he was. And then how in the middle of the procession, like the candle he was holding, like rolled off onto the floor, and how embarrassed he was. And you may think, well, why on earth would you share something that that's so embarrassing? But the way he talked about it and the way he just kind of presented it, was very human. And it's like, hey, this is this thing that happened to me, and this is how I kind of dealt with it and reflected on it. And again, it can be kind of the most, it can be inane or innocuous. It can be really serious. We've read some great essays through College Inroads, and I think we'll probably have some examples of some that are memorable. And I think that ultimately that's what's important. Is it one that I'm going to remember? That particular essay that I just referenced was one that I read when I worked at WashU, and that was over 20 years ago. And I still remember, and I remember how it made me smile and laugh, and was like, that of the 1,000 applications or so that I read that year, that's one that I circled back to and said, this guy really resonated with me. I really like just kind of who he is and how he presented himself. And like I said, he was memorable. So I think that that's what they, want to hear about it. And again, you can write from whatever perspective you want. I'm going to write about something serious, or, a lot of that's obviously going to be driven by the prompt. But one of the prompts that you typically have in like the common application is, kind of a propose your own question and answer it type of thing. So there really is a lot of freedom in terms of what you can write about and how you want to approach it.
Absolutely. Peter, one of the things that you touched on, I think you even said the word, was authenticity. That's another thing that, to me, if it's authentic and memorable, that's home run. And let me promise everybody here on this call today, you have authenticity. You have something that will make you memorable. So I don't want you to feel like, oh, I don't have anything. I got no ammo here. That's not true. I promise. So how long would an admissions rep spend on an essay really? So it depends on the institution. It could be a long time. It could be really mulled over, very, very in depth. It could be minutes. Okay, so depends on where they are in their process and how things are going in their on the college side of things. So just know that it is important to write a very solid essay so that you don't hang them up in the middle of your essay with typos or weird sentence structures or things like that. So that's the important thing there. Deadlines aren't coming up anytime soon. The Common App isn't going to open up until midsummer. The Coalition app may open up July 1st. Most college deadlines for applications, which is where the essays are going to be due, are November 1st. There are a few that are October 15th. So we got plenty of time to knock these things out, but we're going to work ahead of time, right? We're not going to procrastinate. Like Peter and I are both procrastinators. We are not going to procrastinate on these essays because they are the long pole in the tent. They are the thing that I have seen hang up students in the application process more than releasing transcripts, more than any of that other stuff. And then the last question a lot of students are going to ask is, how many of these damn things I'm going to have to write? Is it going to be 2 or 5 or 30? I mean, and that really depends on your school's list. Okay, so those of you who are applying to Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Duke, Yale, et cetera, you're going to have dozens of college essays to write. Truly, I mean, I'm not going to josh you on that. I'm going to shoot you straight. However, many of these are similar. You're going to be able to morph and change some of your essays around. So it's not going to be that onerous, but just know if you're applying to hyper selective schools, they tend to ask multiple supplemental questions. So it's not just going to be 1 or 2. If you're applying to less selective in-state public schools, yeah, you may only have 1 that you might have to write. So this is completely across the spectrum. Okay, before we jump into the essay things, I want you to understand how essays kind of rank in terms of relative importance to admissions people. And this slide lists the most important factors in college admissions. And this is taken from the Independent Educational Consultants of America webpage, where they do a survey every year talking to admissions directors about what has relative importance. So of course, curriculum and GPA, your transcript is the most important thing. How many courses you took, what did you take, how hard did you push yourself, what type of high school do you attend, et cetera. That becomes the number one, determinant of your success in their school. So that's the reason why those 2 factors are up top. The SAT and ACT, that is in line somewhat with your GPA if you're submitting SAT or ACT scores. So that one is kind of, I would put that one in the parentheses. But look where well-written essay is, man. That's number 4 out of 12, so it's way up there. And if you really combine these first 2 together in a transcript and strip away, number 3, because you're going test optional, it becomes like the most important thing right next to what you've done in school. So I always thought about this going, man, this is probably some of the most important writing that you're going to do that you will never get a grade on. And, some people just blow this thing off and write it the night before that their app is due. And that's, to me, crazy. Do not do that. That puts way too much stress on you as a student to try to jam that into a good application. So common concerns, hey, I don't have anything to say. I live this bubble life in Lake Travisville and nothing has really happened to me. I'm not a first generation. No, stop. You absolutely have things to say. You've absolutely had experiences that have caused emotions in your life. And you have authentic, feelings and experiences to talk about, I promise, okay? We will help you source those ideas. I'm not that special. That kind of goes along with number 1. Number 3, I don't like the prompts. They suck. Yeah, I've heard that before. But, okay, so Peter mentioned this. There are catch-all questions on all these prompts, and we'll show those to you. You can create your own, at least for the core essays. So don't worry about that. I'm too busy. Yeah, that is a real concern, gang. I have talked with students who are like, yeah, I need to start 2 years ahead of time because I am lacrosse team captain, I'm debate, I am student body, I am, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're just slammed all the way through their high school career. we're going to have to carve out some time on this, gang. I want you to take it seriously. I want you to have some quality writing presented to them. I'm just not a good writer. That's okay. Believe me, I've seen people who really struggle writing. They may be the best engineer in the world, the most accomplished person in calculus class, but just do not want to put pen to paper. Don't sweat it. That's what our review process is for. Just pay attention to the comments that are given to you, follow those comments, and then rinse and repeat until you have something you're happy with. And I kind of addressed this one already. Can't I just put this off and do it last minute? And the answer is, yeah, you could, but why would you? That's not very sane. So I wouldn't suggest that. Okay, some quick essay tips. Use a process. Yeah, use a process. I know, Peter, when you were in your high school years, do you remember, did you ever write using a process?
No, I didn't. And you're testing me now because my high school years were pretty far back. But I think my process was I sat down at my desk in my room and, kind of chewed on my eraser, so to speak, and literally, just put pen to paper. And I don't think I actually ever went through a revision process. I don't think I actually, wrote something and then stepped away and came back and all the things that I would do now, knowing better. I think also I did it on my own. And that's despite the fact that I had 2 parents and 3 older sisters who all went to college and went through this process before me and could easily have said, hey, I suggest you do X, Y, or Z. So not that they didn't, care about me doing a good job, but I really just kind of did it on my own. So yeah, there wasn't really a process. And like I said, in hindsight, I would probably have done it a little bit differently.
I remember the essay process that I used for the Naval Academy. I just sat down to write the damn thing and I sent it in. No one else looked at it. There was no process, nothing like that. By the way, Peter got into MIT for his undergraduate. So that tells you something about it, where his brain power is. So that's pretty impressive. Anyway, definitely we've learned from our mistakes, use a process, okay? I always like beginning the first couple sentences, and this is for the main essay prompt. This is not for a supplemental essay, but right up front, if you're doing a Common App core essay, start the thing with an anecdote, a situation that grabs the reader's attention. Put the reader in some sort of action in your world, okay? That is a very easy way to begin to engage your reader. So that's just a quick tip for you. Definitely use active voice. Passive voice is acceptable in some ways, but you're doing a narrative essay, so using an active voice, and we'll talk about that and just reaffirm, you already know what this is, but we're going to reaffirm it here in a minute. And then upon completion of your draft, read your essay aloud. Peter, I remember we did something like this. I can't remember the professor that introduced this, but I was in a master's degree at UT before someone said, hey, by the way, damn it, you should read your essay aloud before you turn it into me. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant, because your mind, gang, is very powerful. If you write something down, you will miss things. Your mind will auto correct. When you read it, you're just skipping over words. It's amazing what your mind will do. But if you read it, you will not be able to skip over words. You'll be like, whoa, I missed this word or that word in the middle of my paragraphs, or this doesn't flow correctly, etc. So absolutely read your essay aloud before you turn it into us. Okay, so here's that process I was talking about. The first stage is pre-writing, brainstorming, and we're going to help you with that. Think about personality traits that you want the college essay reader on the other side of the desk to get. So Peter, what would be a few, I don't know, just off the top of your head, a few character traits that you would want to know if you were applying to college tomorrow? What are some character traits that you would want them to know about you?
I think I would want them to know who I am as a person, how I identify myself, whether that's my ethnicity, being Mexican-American, or where I come from, being from Texas, actually native Austinite, which is a rare breed sometimes. Just the things that I enjoy, the things that I'm passionate about. My faith is important to me. I may not necessarily write about that, but it's something that is important to me. My compassion and empathy for other people, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you're going to throw all those things up on a whiteboard or whatever and sort the things out that you want to talk about. For example, the thing that crosses my mind is I want people to know that I like to dive deeply into projects and have a lot of fun, in the things that I enjoy the most, and I will dedicate a lot of time to them once I'm engaged. Okay, it's not just about listing accomplishments. The reason why I say that is because that's the reason your resume rather is important. You're listing, hey, I was, on a winning baseball team that went to state. That's going on your resume. You can write about it in your essay, but they're already going to see that somewhere else. Okay, draft it. Outline the actual essay. Paragraph 1 is going to be this. Paragraph 2 is going to be this. I know that all of you've learned like the 5-paragraph form. That's fine. You can use that, but you can make it 4 paragraphs or 7. It doesn't matter. Critically look what you've written. Does it make sense? Is it in the right order? And so you might need to change around paragraph ordering and things like that. Soak time. Number 3 is edit your own work. So give it some soak time. Do not try to do this the same day that you've done your draft. Give it a day or two. Share it with people that you trust. How is this paragraph structured? What inferences did you draw as a reader? So if you have a friend of yours read this thing, they might come away saying, yeah, I learned this and this about you, but you're missing something, that sort of deal. That's editing. Then finalizing it, reading it aloud, running spell check, grammar check, all that kind of stuff. And then you upload it into your Inroads portal by the assigned due date. So your educational consultant will give you a period of time to write these essays. So just pay attention to that. We ask that you respect it to keep your own process running on time. And then 5, rinse and repeat. You're going to get critical feedback from our essay review team. Believe me, a lot of times you're going to put in an essay and we're going to bleed on it. It's going to be red when you get it back. Do not worry. That's normal. That's the way it usually runs. Okay. And then they're going to give you critical narrative comments of things to think about. Okay, here's an example. I'm going to read it to you. As the blood spurted up across Dr. Cunningham's face, I began to see just how interesting oral surgery can be. I watched as he put a collagen plug in place and slowed the bleeding before my heart rate began to fall a little. And I realized that I'd probably just found my perfect profession. This is my first day shadowing Dr. Cunningham, and this internship now turned into a full-time summer job is quite possibly the most important thing I could do to reach the goal of someday becoming an oral surgeon. Listen to how the tone changes here. Academically, I'm on track to become an oral surgeon. I took 3 AP classes last year and will be taking 4 AP classes my senior year, both to prepare myself for college and make my freshman year of college slightly easier for my harder sophomore and junior year, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that first paragraph rocked. I mean, that was a very important hook, that this person hit me with blood spurting up across someone's face. Okay, you got my attention. That second paragraph is less important. I can already understand from your application what you're going to be taking your senior year, how hard you've worked, et cetera, et cetera. So that was one where I'm like, the essay review team probably said, hey, fantastic first go at your essay. The second paragraph, let's try to get some other information in there or maybe strip a little bit of that out, because it's going to be seen someplace else in the application. But overall, a nice essay. Okay, some tips. We talked about active voice a little bit. Here's an example. Rules are often broken by rebellious teenagers. This is where passive voice is used. Rebellious teenagers, notice this is the subject of the sentence, often break rules. So the subject is actually doing the action. That's all that is. It's a fancy way of saying, hey, whatever you're saying, your subject is actually, doing the thing, which is breaking rules. Okay. And then the other thing I would say is I've seen students go, oh, let me go to thesaurus here and pop in a few extra nice words that sound really great, like eschew or equivocate. I mean, all good. You might use those in everyday parlance. Fantastic if you do. But if you don't, that might really stand out as something that's like, okay, mom wrote this or dad wrote this or somebody else wrote this, so make sure that you're using words that you would normally use. Now, if you use equivocate on a daily basis, 100% do it, all good. Okay, essay rules from the big picture. Answer the question, damn it. I mean that. So you might find some crazy questions where there's like 6 questions embedded in one. And I have to tell you, the people on the other side of the desk, they don't know, they're not even aware that they're doing this. They're just so excited to get to know you. They ask like it's like a machine gun question. There's 1,000 things that they're jamming in there. And you actually, as a person writing the essay, have to answer each one of those little things. So definitely pay attention to that. And what I would do, I would actually cut and paste this into a Word doc or into a Google Doc, whatever the question is, and continually go back and review, am I really answering the crux of what they're asking? Definitely stay within the word limits. Please do not turn in an essay that's 1,200 words if they're asking for a 650 word essay. It's very clearly stated what they're looking for. Now, that said, if you were truly having a hard time, you're like, I wrote this amazing story, I just can't pare it down, that's a different story. But just blindly shoving in a giant essay, please try to stay within these word limits up front. And number 3 is super important. Do not have your parents write your essay. Don't strip this off the internet. Do not plagiarize. Don't do that. That is cause for dismissal from our process. It just is. We do not, want to support, that type of behavior. And by the way, parents are well-meaning. They want to help, and they have a great perspective on your life, et cetera. But when they start to take the controls from you, that really hollows out the admissions process, number 1. But they will goof it up. I promise you, they will mess this up. I have seen it in the past. So don't do that. Don't just list accomplishments. That's, you can absolutely be proud of what you've done. This is not a place for you to shy away from the things you've accomplished. Peter has often said, yeah, it's fine to brag a little bit. And I promise you, it's not going to come across as bragging, but just don't list the accomplishments. And also don't try to write something that you think the admissions office people want to hear. That is also a recipe for disaster. And then thinking about vulnerability. It's tough, but rewarding work. Where have I truly failed? Where was, shame for me in high school? When you start to dig into that level of, soul searching, you're actually diving into who you are as a human. My wife as a therapist would probably be like, yeah, go vulnerability. And I promise that leads to really good essays. Peter, I'm going to pause here. Do you have any comments here on any of this stuff?
Yeah, no, I think right from the beginning, answer the question. I've seen some essays where they might have been beautifully written, but they didn't answer the question. And so I didn't get to know that student in the way that I wanted to. So that's kind of a missed opportunity. And I would say that in terms of, kind of just echoing what you'd said about, kind of advocating for yourself or bragging, as it were. I tell people modesty is a wonderful quality, but it won't serve you well in the competitive admissions process. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be a braggadocio. That's one of those thesaurus words. But you can reflect on it and say, I was really proud of the work that I did in this activity, or in, contributing to Habitat for Humanity, or I, took this mission trip, or whatever the case may be. I think it's good to reflect on those things. And that's what we want to know. Not so much, I did this thing, which you can see on my resume, but what I got out of that experience, who I met, what I learned about other people, or what I learned about myself. And yeah, I think vulnerability, it could be, as Mike said, something that, this is an experience I'm not proud of, but it's something that happened. I grew from it. I'm a better person. It could also be, depending on the tone of your essay, something, amusing and embarrassing, like, the example I gave at the beginning about the kid whose candle rolled off of the staff he was carrying in, this, religious procession, and just, kind of the horror. I could just kind of visualize, kind of the eye rolling that the student and probably everyone else around him was experiencing, and then again, that made me laugh, and that was memorable. So don't force this process. I think, and that kind of goes back to the don't write something that you think the admissions office wants to hear. I want to hear your genuine voice. And so, put some thought into what you're going to write, adhere to your process, whatever that may be, but just don't force it. Sit, write something, step away from it if you have to, come back to it. That of course goes back to the don't write it the night before it's due type of thing, so that you have time to kind of cultivate a really good essay.
Yep. Awesome. And then, we talked earlier about, using words straight from the thesaurus that you may not use, but there's the other side of the coin too, like using like and huge and really, and all those kinds of amplifiers that we use in everyday word, conversations. please try to strip that out. And colloquialisms and slang, cliches, jargon, my summer was a dumpster fire, things like that. That's not going to be something that, this is a little bit more formal than that. Okay, so just know that as well. So tread lightly on a few topics. Now, again, I'm not saying you cannot talk about these in an essay, but just know these have been done multiple times, like the big football game, basketball game, championship XYZ sports thing, and what you learned and came away from the sports achievement. I've seen it successfully done, believe me. So, but just if you're going to do it, really pay attention to yourself, your own emotions, your own, recollections and things of that nature. The mission trip to fill in the blank underserved community and country. Again, this can be an outstanding essay, but just know you're going straight into the lion's den because everyone's written about this in the past. Politics, yeah, that's tough. You don't know who your reader is, right? They could be very liberal, very, very conservative, and anything in between. So just be careful with that. Anything that could be whining or ranting, also not necessarily something that we want to read about in an essay. Like super bragging, like, just out and out, saying that you're the best thing since sliced bread, that's tough. Wealth, privilege, and its trappings. Like, I love living in XYZ community's bubble and watching the Teslas drive by, et cetera. That signals to the admissions rep that, you may be living in a different world that would contrast with a lot of the other people who are going to be coming to campus. And then the 4 Ds, death, divorce, depression, and learning differences. So just think about this. Again, I'm not saying you cannot write about these. Just talk with your educational consultant about how to appropriately approach those if those are things that you want to talk through in your essays. So here's an example. This one is a super, I'm going to skip this one. You can read, this is super long. It's really good though. Let me get into the application types because we're kind of running out of time. Number one, there are 3 applications that are most common. There are others out there, but the Apply Texas one is all public universities and private schools in Texas, with the exception of Rice and Mary Hardin Baylor. The common application, there are over 500 schools around the country that use that. They have 7 essays that are part of this. Apply Texas has 3, and then the coalition application has 5. This is a newer one, the coalition application. Some schools are part of it, some people are not. So University of Washington, for example, is one of the schools that only accepts this type of application. So you're going to see some of these, and I'll show you what that kind of looks like, on your portal here in a little bit. So how can you tell which application type my college accepts? So this is Amherst College, a super hyper competitive school up in the Northeast. And you can't really see these little icons, but this red icon is Common App, and this funky little upturned C is coalition. Okay, so that's how you can know what type of application type your school actually uses. Okay, and this is on the college tab of your portal. Okay, this year's Apply Texas prompts. The Apply Texas prompts have not changed from last cycle to this cycle. So most of us are going to be writing SAA, period, end of story. If you're applying to A&M or UT, they ask specifically for SAA. Tell us your story. Which unique opportunities or challenges have you experienced throughout high school that have shaped you into who you are today? SAB is also Common App number 1. That's also very helpful. If you're not doing A&M or UT, you may choose to do this one instead because that does fit nicely with the Common App prompts. And you're talking about identities, interests, or talents. Clearly, all of us have an identity, an interest, or talent that we could talk about. So that's SAB. SAC, I kind of crossed out. I love this prompt, but almost no one writes this anymore. There's not a single college that requires it on the Apply Texas application. So if you're an artistic, super creative person, you may want to consider writing this one. But to me, like I said, it's a favorite of mine, but it's not one that is usually answered. Okay, if you apply to UT, these are last year's prompts. These can change. UT they're notorious for like the last minute posting new prompts. 2 years ago, they posted new prompts after the application had actually been put out on the web. So it was terrible. Why are you interested in the major that you're looking at? Tell us about leadership. What do you bring to campus that is going to be unique? And then tell me about any excess, baggage basically that have impacted your high school performance, et cetera, et cetera. So you can kind of see these are shorter answers. These are usually 200 to 300 words, not really long. 200 to 300 words, gang, is about half a page long. Whereas these prompts here, these are 500 to 650 words. This is like a page, maybe a page and a quarter at the most, just to give you a sense of length, okay? The common application, again, I'm not gonna belabor all of these different prompts, but this is the one that most people are gonna go after because it is super, it covers a lot of ground. And again, it's shared with the Apply Texas application, but other people, you do not have to state as a prompt number one. You can choose any one of the 7. And what I would do is talk about, just for a minute, number 7. You can share an essay on any topic of your choice. There is absolutely room for you to write about anything that you would like to do. Your educational consultant is going to work with you to choose which of these prompts are going to be the best for you, okay? Then here's another example, from babysat to babysitter. In my family, the transition from innocent boy to revered man is accomplished by undertaking responsibility. The events that apparently reflect responsibility are babysitting, having a house key, driving, and having an ATM card. I distinctly remember the first time the honor of babysitting was bestowed upon me. I was a sophomore and my parents were going for dinner downtown. Normally, they might dash to the supermarket, leaving us alone for minutes. Now, however, they were gone for a whole 5 hours, and they blithely announced that I was in charge. They were entrusting me to keep my younger brother and sister safe, prevent the house from burning down, feed us all, and get everyone to bed on time. Obviously, this was code for having friends over, listening to music as loud as you want, play Call of Duty Black Ops, force your siblings to obey your every command. I manned up, accept this awesome responsibility, and off they went. Immediately, I ordered my young charges to heat up eggplant parmesan while I went upstairs to commence the zombie apocalypse on the Xbox. Unbeknownst to me, my younger sister put a fork in the microwave along with the dinner. Even over the cacophony of dying zombies, I heard the explosion and rushed downstairs to witness a mini Chernobyl. Just as I extinguished the fireworks, my brother crows, "Boy, are you in trouble." I can't wait to tell mom and dad about the fire. So yeah, this is the beginnings of a phenomenal essay. This was probably something, like Peter said, is memorable. Now, this is super humorous, this one. Most of us don't have this in us, okay? So tread lightly. If you are super joker, if you are the person who can instantly cause people to laugh, go for it, show humor. But for most of us, I would never attempt this type of essay myself. How about you, Peter?
Yeah, no, I agree. I tell people, if you're funny, be funny. If you're not, don't try, because this is not the place to practice your stand-up.
Exactly.
So yeah, go, play to your strengths, whatever those may be.
For sure. And then I want to talk about some supplemental questions. These guys do not get published until summertime. So we're sitting there scratching our heads as to what UT or A&M or MIT may be asking in this admission cycle. We're not going to know until the Common App or Coalition App or whatever they subscribe to releases their essay. So here's just some examples that you can cling on to as to how colleges, after they've asked that main core essay, how are they digging in? So Tufts is going to ask, celebrate your nerdy side. Okay, Wake Forest, think of things that fascinated you when you were 10 years old. What has endured? Caltech, please describe an unusual way in which you have fun. Brandeis, a package arrives at your door after seeing the contents, you know it's going to be the best day of your life. What's inside and how do you spend your day? That's a phenomenal essay prompt. I love that one. So here's another essay example. This one I added this year because this student wrote this for Duke and was accepted. So I want you to see an example of an essay that kind of paid off for the student. They're paying you to do what? My mom's word reverberated in my head as we stood in the blazing sun waiting to begin. Don't they know that you're just high school kids? The memory of dismay on my mom's face swam into my mind's eye as the wedding party assembled. I felt the string of sweat, my hands growing slick. I became lightheaded, my baritone saxophone a yoke around my neck. This is our first professional gig, with the bride about to walk down the aisle to our music. We called ourselves the McPhailures, in homage to our saxophone teacher, Mr. McPhail. As the one tasked with maintaining tempo and starting and stopping each piece, I couldn't let our name become an omen. I glimpsed Caleb looking at me for reassurance. I closed my eyes, took a steadying breath, and images of my mom's horror dissipated. We spent years preparing for this moment. Since middle school, the 5 of us had dedicated countless hours to exploring, arranging, and recording music together. This impromptu group bolstered my confidence and engendered my willingness to take on uncomfortable new challenges in music and beyond, such as this wedding, playing at Carnegie Hall, and leading student organizations. At Duke, I aspired to play in the marching band, pep band, and jazz ensemble. With the ceremony starting, I opened my eyes to look purposefully at each ensemble member. I winked at Caleb. I gave the cue. We took a collective breath and began to play. That was a rock star essay, if you ask me. Really, really interesting. You got my attention. You talked about vulnerability. You just dove into, hey, what am I going to be doing at the school? Talking about how you are a teammate and somebody who is working with people for long periods of time. There's a lot of cues in here that say, hey, this is a superior, character. Mm-hmm. Okay. This year's coalition prompts, again, tell a story from your life, describing that experience that either demonstrates your character or helped to shape it. You can see the similarities between these prompts, between these different application types. So this is what I was saying before. You can really take one prompt and morph it into another pretty easily. My favorite one is, what's the hardest part of being a teenager now? What's the best part? What advice would you give a younger sibling or friend? I particularly love this, but again, you can write on any of these 5 prompts if you have a coalition app school, including a catch-all with this submit a topic of your choice essay. Okay, so here's another essay example. Now, again, this is a supplemental essay. I have a passion for telling other people's stories. It is fascinating to learn what drives people, who they are, and what has happened to them, and then share their stories. Politics, social justice, and pop culture form the heart of my writing. Through my student-led newspaper, Vandergrift Voice, I've written articles about gun violence in American high schools, RGB's legacy, women's experience with the BLM music, what young voters are looking for in a candidate, and about my experiences with the climate strike movement. I quickly discovered my talent for editing when staff members asked me to help them craft a lead or, for my opinion, on the latest Netflix series for their review. And I'm now a co-editor of my paper. My advisor encouraged me to join the UIL journalism team to hone my skills writing editorials, features, and news stories in a timed environment. I won several awards for these articles and discovered a thrill for completing a compelling story in a compressed time frame. Because of these factors, I believe I have journalistic potential. I want to hone it into a skill that will showcase incredible stories and report the truth. So this student took this essay and got accepted into a host of schools, including Syracuse, which is where she is now, like a top journalism school. Okay, so this one is a random example. This one would be like an MIT or University of Chicago essay. I'm not going to read this one to you because honestly, it's hard for me to even understand, but this person compared apples to oranges and broke it down into whether they should or should not be compared. I'm going to skim over this because we have a few more slides and I don't want to go over time for you. So other common essay questions. These are super common. Please provide an answer if you wish to provide details of circumstances or qualifications not reflected in the application. In other words, hey, what's missing? Oh yeah, I changed high schools, in the middle of my sophomore year. Hey, my mom passed away when I was a sophomore. This crushed me. Hey, I have a medical condition that took me out of school for 4 weeks. This is the kind of stuff, guess what? No one's going to know unless you fill in this question. So if you have special circumstances that you want to talk about, absolutely talk about it. If you're a first generation student, you really want to talk about that here because, again, these are all things that form this mosaic of a picture for you. And why are you a good fit for XYZ school? Peter, what do you think about this one? How would you kind of crack this nut? Why are you a good fit for, Kansas State or for MIT?
I would definitely do your homework around this. And what I sometimes tell students is that you may make a specific reference to something that is school specific. And it could be, I really, depending on what your interests are, it could be, I'm interested in neuroscience or journalism or any of a host of other things. And it could be, I read about, the work going on in this professor's lab. I'm really interested in research and would love to get involved in that. I know that, such and such school that most of the students study abroad. That's something that's really important to me. And I looked at the different options that, your school offers. And I think of, the many places that I've looked that I think this would just be a phenomenal fit for me. It can also be just about the environment. It doesn't necessarily have to be, it has this program, it has this professor, this lab, this student. group and can be the environment. I feel like I really resonate with the type of students that go to your institution, that go to this institution. I can totally see myself in that environment and wanting to be a part of it. So, this is one there that you definitely don't want to just kind of cut and paste from one institution to the other. You want to tailor your answer to that school specifically. And typically these are relatively short essays. These are like 250 words or something of that nature. So, it's not something that you have to write a whole treatise on. But I would say that, like I said, do your homework about that particular institution. And I think that will make them feel good. Like, oh, okay.
What's going on.
I've learned about us.
Absolutely. And sometimes you actually have to sell yourself on this one as well. Like NYU, you can look and see that basically they want you to comment on specifics of the institution, why you think you're a good fit, and why you as a human are a really good fit for their programming. So remember, there's a kind of a two-way street on this, a good fit kind of situation. If you need more help, go to hell. No, just joking. Go to Essay Hell. Okay. Or my favorite is collegeessayguy.com. He's got some fantastic advice and guidance. You can also work with your educational consultant with us. I mean, we're all here to help in this process. Okay, so hard and fast rules. Allow a 10-day lead time for essay critique and review. And that in this early stage of operations doesn't mean a lot, right? Because we don't have deadlines. But if you have a 1 November deadline and you've waited from March until October 20th, and you're like, oh, I got to get this thing done, and then you submit it on the 25th of October, we're going to turn it around and say, sorry, you've had months to do this. It's a 10-day lead time. And that just is out of respect for our essay review staff, okay? Submit essays via your website portal. So, and also, by the way, don't do pages. Hate to say that, gang. None of us do Apple. We all have, iPhones, but none of us have, Apple products for PC. We're PC peeps. So I'm going to share a different screen really quickly. I want to go to the portal really quick. Let me share screen one. Okay, and I'm going to go into, this is what your portal looks like, right? So I want to show you where a few things are. For those of you who have been around for a little while, this may look a little different. This changed as of the middle of March. So when you go into the college tab, okay, it's going to dig into this kind of screen, and then you can go into, your individual school. And then once you're in the individual school, you'll notice up here in the upper right-hand corner, this essay tab, okay? Clicking on here is going to give you, okay, A&M uses the Coalition app. It also uses Apply Texas. You can drop this down and you can see the application essays. They require tell us your story. Well, you already knew that from earlier today's session. Required supplements. Here's all the supplements. So notice this is 2021. This is not 2022. So we won't know these for sure until a little later. But we did our homework, and the Apply Texas main essay is not going to change for this year. Okay, so that is something I wanted to point out. The other thing is to submit your work. Okay, go to Files right over here on the left-hand side, and then you're going to go up to Files for your consultant, uploaded files, and this little plus thingy. Okay, so if you're doing a Word doc, just go ahead and click this and send you to a place where you just upload docs. If you're going to do a Google Doc, which is totally fine, just add the link here. So Google Doc, Word doc. Okay, that's what that looks like. Okay, enough of that. Let me go back to the other screen, screen 2. Here we go. Okay, great. So let me get out of here. Okay, so logistics. Okay, so here's how it works. You're going to go ahead and proofread. You're going to go ahead and do the spell check function and then upload to the website just like I showed you. This needs to be in your own work. Don't plagiarize. We talked about that before. And then let's go ahead and set up a time to meet one-on-one to begin the writing process with your educational consultant. Okay, so definitely after today, go ahead and text into your portal, say, hey, I'd like to go ahead and set up my time, and Lori or Dee will set up that with your consultant. And when you upload, please use this format, okay? The MS Word or Google Doc, no pages, John Smith, Apply Texas, SAA, first revision. That's very important for our staff to get your uploaded title to be this, so they know what they're working with. And when you're done, you've rinsed and repeated, and you're super happy with your essay, go ahead and upload it one last time and put final at the end of it. That tells us that this is the final essay. And believe me, we've actually bailed people out before where their computer crashed and they're like, holy crap, I don't have a copy of my essay, and we do. So that's the reason why we ask for all of your finalized essays. Okay, and what are we gonna do between now and May 31st? We're gonna be handling these 5 essays. We're gonna talk about the what is your story essay, that's the long one, which is a page. Leadership, major, college match, and diversity. Those are the main themes. These are what I would call initial supplements, okay? We don't know what schools you have finalized on your list. We won't know their supplemental prompts yet, but by doing these latter 4 smaller essays, you're gonna be hitting a lot of ground, and you're gonna be able to use those across the board in many schools. All right, to wrap up, what have we learned? We talked about the essay writing process. We've spelled a few myths about essays. We've talked about resources. We've gained a perspective on what's being asked of us. We are now much more understanding of the critical role that you actually play. And we've gained an understanding of the time that we're on. So I do want to share one other screen with you really quickly, just to show one other document. I was remiss, I forgot to do this. So let me go back into Joe Doe here real quick. When you go to the files section, you're going to have documents that have been uploaded already from your consultant. And when you go down to essay help, there's going to be multiple files in here, but there's instructions for doing the Google Doc, there are essay prompts. I went ahead and amended this yesterday. So when you get into this, it's kind of a simple recap of what we've talked about today, which is really cool. And then it's going to list all the damn essays that are the common essays to write. So you're going to have access to all of this stuff, which is in there. And it's going to tell you, by the way, the Apply Texas prompts are current. UT Austin, nope, not current yet. We won't know that. So this document is already in your files. That's what I wanted to show you. So you have resources already at your fingertips to work with. So I'm going to stop that share. Let me go back into screen 2. Okay, so yeah, we've learned all those things, which is all good and fine. And now it's time for questions. So I think everyone's muted, but please unmute yourself if you have questions to ask, especially for Peter, since we've got a great resource of him standing right here. So I'll pause. Questiones. All right, so
I guess we were really good.
I guess we were either really good or everyone's like drained their coffee and are falling over on their side in a coma or something. But anyway, definitely first things first, set your educational consultant meeting to start brainstorming your essays. Start thinking about what essays you would like, just random ideas that you might want to work with, and your educational consultant will help hone those. Continue working on what you've been assigned to do by your consultant. Work on your college list, college visits, and SAT, ACT prep. So with that being said, I'm going to pause one more time to make sure we just didn't, plow through somebody's question. So text them in or unmute yourself and feel free to ask away. All right. Well, I think we've gotten a critical mass, and I think we've accomplished our mission, Peter.
Definitely. Yeah. Again, this is a process. You're not going to be, you may not even know what some of the prompts are. You may not yet know what colleges you're even going to be applying to as your final list. So, don't get yourself too tied up in too many knots. There is time to work on these things. And then once you get into the process, I think, it'll feel a little more comfortable. Sometimes it can be difficult to write about yourself, to talk about yourself. But I think that you'll ease into that process. And again, there's time. So, don't get too wound up about those sorts of things. But clearly, hopefully y'all taken away some good pointers. And as Mike said, we're here to help you. So definitely, lean on your educational consultant with whatever, questions you might have. And certainly if you have any questions for me specifically, folks know how to get in touch with me and I can get in touch with you. So I'm happy to share whatever pearls of wisdom I can, because I definitely want you guys to be successful as you go through this process. Let us help in whatever way we can.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining in. Thank you, Peter, for being with us. This is awesome. And I hope everyone got a lot out of today's session, and we look forward to working with you on your essays. My favorite part of the whole process. I do have a few chats here before we go, and it looks like everyone just said thank you. So, all right, gang, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I'll stick around if you have any other questions offline. And I hope you have a great weekend and great afternoon.